You know, does any of this feel familiar? The crazy high valuations, the nonstop hype around AI, it can all feel pretty chaotic, right? But what if I told you there's a predictable rhythm to all this madness? In this explainer, we are going to dive deep into economic history to try and find the pattern behind the panic. It is the multi-trillion-dollar question on everyone's mind. Is this time different? I mean, the absolute mania around AI, crypto, it feels like nothing we've ever seen before. But you know what they say? History doesn't repeat, but it often rhymes. Today, we're going to explore a really powerful theory that suggests we're not just repeating history, we're actually following a script that's played out over and over again for centuries.
All right, so here's our game plan. First, we'll set the stage with the current market drama. Then we're going to unpack this incredible framework called the Perez cycle. After that, we'll put that theory to the test, see where it holds up and where it might fall short. We'll even apply it to a real-world showdown between two huge companies, and then wrap it all up with some strategic takeaways you can actually use.
So, our guide for this whole journey is the work of an amazing economist named Carlota Perez. Her book, Technological Revolutions and Financial Capital, is, and I'm not exaggerating here, like a master key for decoding these totally predictable cycles of boom and bust that seem to define our entire economy. Okay, so right at the heart of Perez's whole theory is this really radical idea. Financial bubbles, they are not a bug in the system, they're a feature. She argues that progress doesn't just happen in a nice, neat, straight line. Nope, it happens in these huge, messy, disruptive surges. And that so-called irrational exuberance of a bubble, well, that's the chaotic but absolutely necessary engine that pays for the entire foundation of the next technological age. So what actually fuels these massive surges? Well, Perez says it's all about this dramatic tug of war, this dance between two totally different kinds of capital. So let's meet the main characters in this economic play. In one corner, you've got financial capital. Perez calls this the casino. Think of it as the fast money, right? The VCs, the investors, all chasing those crazy high returns on whatever the new hot thing is. And in the other corner, you have production capital, the builders. These are the entrepreneurs, the industrialists on the ground, the ones actually using the technology to make real stuff, real goods and services. The entire cycle is driven by the tension and sometimes the all-out collision between these two forces. And this, right here, is the entire Perez cycle in a nutshell. It's basically a 50 or 60-year drama that plays out in 5 acts. It all kicks off with eruption. That's the moment a brand new technology is born. This sparks a frenzy as financial capital just piles in, inflating this massive bubble. Then, of course, comes the inevitable crash. But what's interesting is that from that wreckage, synergy emerges. This is a golden age where the builders get to work using all that new infrastructure before finally the cycle ends in maturity. Let's zoom in on that first half, the installation period. This is where all the wild, chaotic stuff happens. It starts with an eruption, some game-changing new tech like the microprocessor. This ignites a frenzy where financial capital, just gripped by pure FOMO, starts throwing money at literally anything that has to do with the new tech. Valuations get completely unhinged from reality. We've seen it before. Think of the railway mania in the 1840s, or more recently, the dot-com bubble in the late 90s. Okay, so after that speculative fever finally breaks, after the crash, we enter the deployment period. And this is the key. This is where the real lasting value gets created. The whole focus shifts from just hype and building the tech to actually using it. All that infrastructure that the bubble paid for is now in place, and the builders can get to work, weaving this new technology into the fabric of the entire economy. This period of synergy, that is the true golden age. It happens long after the speculators have gotten bored and moved on. Now, Perez's framework is incredibly powerful, but every great theory needs to be stress tested. So let's put on our critical hats for a minute and take a hard look at both the strengths and the potential blind spots of this model. So the absolute genius of this model is that it explains how society pays for its biggest, riskiest leaps into the future. I mean, think about it. No sane, rational banker would fund a national fiber optic network from scratch. You need the mania of a bubble to get that done. On the flip side, the model can feel a little too neat, almost like it's saying a crash is guaranteed. And maybe most importantly, it might be a bit outdated. Today, you've got giants like Google and Microsoft with enough cash to fund their own revolutions, which could completely change the game. And that brings us to a really fascinating and super crucial question for right now. Perez's model is built on the idea of new challengers coming in and overthrowing the old guard.
But what happens when the old guard are the new challengers? Does the cycle even apply when the incumbents themselves are the ones driving the AI revolution? It's a really interesting thing to think about.
Okay, to really see this theory in action, let's look at a tale of two companies from the last big cycle. One of them played the game absolutely perfectly, navigating from the frenzy to the deployment phase. The other, well, the other became the poster child for what happens when you get stuck in the bubble and believe your own hype.
Amazon is the masterclass here. It used all that cheap, easy money from the dot-com frenzy to build out this massive, expensive infrastructure of warehouses and servers. Then, when the crash came, it pivoted. It shifted focus to the deployment phase, getting ruthlessly efficient and then monetizing that infrastructure with things like AWS. WeWork, on the other hand, is the ultimate cautionary tale. It got high on the fumes of the frenzy, pretending a normal real estate business was a tech revolution. When the easy money dried up and people started asking questions, there was no real sustainable production engine there. The whole illusion just shattered.
Okay, so this is all really fascinating theory, but the big question is, how can you actually use it? What does the Paris cycle mean for your strategy, for your career, or maybe for your investments? Let's boil it all down to 3 key takeaways you can use on Monday morning. First, you have to identify what phase you're in. Is your industry in a frenzy like AI startups are right now? Then it's all about growth and grabbing market share, but you better have a plan for the morning after. Are you in a deployment phase? Then the focus has to be on profitability and efficiency. Second, and this is a big one, watch for the turning point. Never, ever confuse a VC check with a viable business model. The easy money will stop. And third, go find the golden age. The really big money is often made not from the shiny new tech itself, but from its boring applications in other, older industries long after the dust is settled. And that brings us right back to Perez's most profound insight, the bubble. With all of its greed and its mania and all those spectacular failures, it's not a mistake. It's the messy, painful, but ultimately productive process of how the future actually gets built. It's what lays behind the entire infrastructure for the next golden age. So I'll just leave you with this question to chew on. If Perez's cycle is right, and if we really are in the middle of this huge AI installation phase, then the question isn't just which AI company is going to win. The real multi-trillion-dollar question is this: which boring, old, established industries, I'm talking agriculture, construction, healthcare, which of those are about to have their own golden age, powered by the AI infrastructure being built today? Because that is where the next generation of fortunes will probably be made.